Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the Youth as Researchers Knowledge Sharing Meeting, being held under the theme addressing the impact of COVID-19 on youth. Now, this knowledge sharing meeting this afternoon, well, it's going to be really and truly assessing. It's a regional session for Latin America and the Caribbean, and we're going to be assessing and getting presentations from different youth as researchers, the different groups from across the region, hearing about the findings from their research, what they've gathered so far as it relates to the learning, well being, and the use of technology, especially in this age of COVID 19. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Antoinette Dennis. I'm a UNESCO youth trainer for Latin America and the Caribbean, and I'll essentially be guiding you through the session and today's proceedings. All right. And so, should there be any questions, should there be any concerns, you can just always use the raise hand feature as part of the Zoom. Also, feel free to utilize the Q&A option of the chat. You know, just to let us know throughout the presentations, throughout the different speakers and persons who will be here with us, if there are any questions you may have and if you want them answered. And when we get to that point in time where we take those Q&As, I'll be able to pose those to the different presenters. So once again, welcome. This session is essentially a part of UNESCO's mandate, really and truly to share the research objectives and experiences of the youth researchers, to allow us to discuss the findings essentially of the research garnered and developed and gained by the different young people from across the region, and to just hear your insights per se and what your peers in themselves have been experiencing as it relates to COVID-19 and the impact of those. Upon reading and seeing the different data being presented outside of the UN and UNESCO, we would have realized that the Latin American Caribbean is one of the regions who've been hardly hit by COVID-19, especially as it relates to education and the education sector. Severe learning loss across different countries and different areas of the Caribbean and Latin America, and having us as young people participate and partake in the solutions, providing and gaining insights on what the solutions really can be. That is a critical part of our mandate and what UNESCO is hoping to do. So just really want to encourage each and every one of you just to take the time you need, present as succinctly as possible, and to really and truly just give us the level of insight and the data and the information that you yourselves would have gathered while you would have been out and collecting information as a young researcher as part of this UNESCO project. Now, I think it's absolutely critical that we're gathered here today. I think it's so great that we've taken the time to really and truly do this level of research, do this level of collaboration. And so I'm really and truly excited to hear the different presentations. And I hope that each and every one of us from the different sub-regional teams and the different countries and backgrounds will be able to gain and learn a lot from the others and our colleagues. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask Geronimo Fulano to just prepare himself to come and give us his presentation. He is from the sub-regional team for Latin America, and he's going to be doing a presentation on the theme, a new academic conjuncture, virtual education during the pandemic. So Geronimo, I'm going to just hand over to you, and just present and let us know what you have and what your team found. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. Well, Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I understand." Hello, everyone. Welcome to our exposition, A New Academic Conjecture, Virtual Education During the Pandemic. My name is Jerónimo. I'm 20 years old and I'm from Argentina. I study international relations, and my teammate is Alexander Andrade. He's 19 years old and he's from Ecuador. He studied physics. We are part of the Latin America and Caribbean team. and we are so glad to be here with you. But let's talk about our research, and that you have perceived virtual classes to what extent they are just as effective in terms of learning as face-to-face classes. We decided to study this topic because we are attending online classes during the quarantine by the pandemic. So we wanted to identify the effects of e-learning on young university students in order to understand whether they adapted, how they felt, what they perceived, and whether this new learning modality reached the required levels. Therefore, from the data obtained, we estimate the effectiveness of virtual education and what is most effective at generate disaffection among the students. Consequently, these errors allow us to determine new strategies to avoid poor academic performance, given that we already estimate the failure of the virtual modality during its first year. But how we did the study? The methodology that we chose for this investigation was a quantitative methodology. A class survey was disseminated through Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and emails. The survey had 14 closed questions and should take 15 minutes to complete. We decided that because we think that closed questions were the most effective to collect the data with the aim of generalize to all Latin America and Caribbean without big difference. After the data collect, we got rid of the data that we didn't interest and we store the most useful data on Excel. We choose the percentage as descriptive static for turn the data collect to easy graphics to analyze. Also, we use the inferential statistics to find conclusions of Latin America and Caribbean with the information obtained from the sample. The results could be repeated in other communities with similar factors where similar results are obtained with a margin of error of 5%. Now, we are to talk about the key findings. 456 students from 12 countries of Latin America and Caribbean complete the survey. 66% experiment a kind of forced adaptation. Generated science virtual education was the only option to continue with the academic activities during the pandemic. This is reflected in the young people assessment of their student experience. First, 87.9% students believe that virtual education in terms of academic performance is not equal to face-to-face education. And also, the 79.7% has not been able to replace interpersonal relationships in the new modality. 61.4% consider that the teacher-student interaction is not entirely adequate as a result in an obstacle not to development of distance education. Now we are talking about the analysis of the findings. If distance education develops autonomous learning in Latin America university students, distance education mustn't generate that they feel exhausted. YAR believe that the virtual education develops autonomous learning, but they also confirm that the results exhausting. Moreover, they experimented and believed that the factors that hinder the development of distance learning are the lack of an adequate environment for learning and lost concentration. These are not experiences from a university student who believes himself as self-taught. In conclusion, we conclude that distance education doesn't develop autonomous learning. Unfortunately, the main effect of this situation is that university students have a passive role in the learning process. Distance education also generates alienation in Latin America university students. YAR felt exhausted signing all the textbooks that they had to read and all the homework that they had to do, and the exams too. They also felt they lost their individuality as a person, as a group, for couldn't replace the interpersonal relationships. Finally, YAF made a difference between get used and adapt. For YAF, get used to distance education means the usual way of acting of a person acquired by repetition of the same act. All in all, we conclude that Latin America university students experience a kind of educational alienation. And now we talk about key recommendations. The first recommendation is that the Ministries of Education, deans, or rectors should consider two parallel methodologies in virtual teaching. On the one hand, synchronous, where the teachers and the students can meet to humanize the learning process. On the other, asynchronous, where the educator is online for a few hours during the week. Teachers should redefine class time to be reasonable, shorter, productive for the students, and they connecting with the teachers. The second recommendation is that the government has to create a helpline for teachers and students to seek technical support if they have difficulties. And the third recommendation is that government has to provide computers to students for low-income families and offer mobile data package and telecommunication subsidies for students and teachers. So that's all. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
All right, thank you so much, Geronimo, for that presentation. Very, very insightful. Some really critical pointers coming out, many of which we would have already been aware of, especially as it relates to contact learning versus the online modality and how students really feel about that. I think that's something that really connected with me. And so for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to this, the Latin America regional session on knowledge sharing meeting. We're going to be having a series of young people and teams sharing the outputs and the outcomes and the results of the research that they would have been carrying out. Just now you heard from Geronimo, he's from Argentina, and he would have presented the findings from his team, the findings on essentially how, given this context of virtual education during the pandemic, how is it that students feel about it? How are they coping? What's the extent to which, as he would have put it, what's the extent to which virtual learning is effective and sufficient? So that was really what he spoke about in his presentation. And so at this point in time, having heard his presentation, we're going to move on. We want to take a video from the research team, basically on the consequences of COVID-19 to sleep quality in Dominican medical students. So we'll take that presentation now.
Hello, we are one of the Latin American teams, and today we're going to present the results of our research that is called Daydreaming, Consequences of COVID-19 on Sleep Quality in Medical Students at Pucamaima, Dominican Republic, 2021. My name is Lizelot Vargas. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a medical student in Dominican Republic.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Estrella. I'm 21 years old, and I'm a medical student at Dominican Republic as well. We wish we were there with you, but for reasons out of our control, we can't. I will start with the research question, that is how young people are being affected by the COVID-19 pandemic related to the consequences of sleep quality in medical students. We were motivated about this topic because with the results, we can provide reliable information, thereby making a wake-up call to raise awareness about the importance of sleep in our daily lives and how it is especially important for optimal academic performance. Moving on with the sample, that were 68 medical students from Pucamaima. Panama, Dominican Republic over 18 to 24 years of age. Our research had a mixed approach based on the design on and use of a questionnaire as a method of collecting information containing open and closed questions. The analysis was quantitative, and once we obtained the data, the focus was on the percentage of responses to extract conclusions, and we also used graphics and tabulation for a better understanding of the information. So here's our key findings. 40% of the sample said that COVID-19 has negatively affected their sleep quality. 63.4% state that they sleep better before COVID-19. 66.3% of the sample reported getting up much less frequently during their sleep phase before COVID-19, and 15% of the sample showed a decrease in recreational substances use after COVID-19.
Now we're going to present the analysis of the findings. First, there seems to be some associations between sleep quality in Putumayo medical students and COVID-19, since the majority of the population have stated that they sleep better before COVID-19, and almost half of the respondents said that COVID-19 has negatively affected the quality of their sleep, which is what we stated in our hypothesis. In relation to this, we found that the amount of time spent on sleep decreased significantly after COVID-19, influencing us to think about maybe the development of toxic habits on the part of the student as a result of the disease. In addition, the result of the questionnaire suggests that COVID-19 could be related to the development of sleep disorders, since before it, students reported getting up much less frequently during the sleep phase, although more research is obviously needed to investigate further this question. And finally, contrary as we stated in our hypothesis, our samples show a 15% decrease in recreational substance use after COVID-19, which led us to believe that recreational substance use is not a significant factor in the sleep quality of our participants. And finally, the recommendations we suggest to the university is that it should promote the importance of good sleep quality for students through support services and virtual awareness raising, such as lectures and talking classes, getting advantage of the virtual world that we're living nowadays. And the number 2 recommendation is that university should provide counseling services to establishing student support teams that promote good sleep quality and healthy habits.
Thank you so much for your attention. This was an incredible opportunity. And again, we were so sorry we can be with you right now, but if you have any questions, please let us know and email us, and we will be more than happy to answer you. Goodbye.
All right. So there you saw and heard the presentation from the ladies from Dominica. I would have seen throughout where they would have highlighted, the reasons and the technicalities or the correlation that they made between COVID-19, its impact, and how that has affected possibly medical students in particular. I think in terms of assessing, the sleep patterns and giving those, especially the statistics that would have come in, that would have been garnered from their participants, that's something that we also can consider, especially for those of us who are either in undergrad or doing postgraduate studies. It's definitely something that we may have considered before, and having the young people themselves, really and truly assess this research hypothesis. It's, I think it's actually something that's very impactful, very worth exploring, and I'm really looking forward to actually being able to see what else or what more guidance they'll actually get from the technical advisors who are here with us today as to how they can improve that body of work. Now, a part of today's focus is really and truly to assess outside of COVID-19 and the impacts that we hear about, mental health, sleep quality. We really and truly are going to be assessing way more the use of social media, how that has affected or impacted the lives of us as young people and people in Latin America and the Caribbean. We'll also be looking at online courses, what the level of participation and actions in these courses have been for like students, teachers, and also what mechanisms or strategies have been taken to alleviate those issues. So when we hear from a number of the other presenters, a lot of these things will be coming to light. Again, you can feel free to interact with each other, to ask questions via the chat feature, the chat box on the Zoom, and also pose your questions via the Q&A feature. So when we get to the Q&A sections, you can have those questions. I can also raise those questions for them to be answered. All right. And so at this point in time, I'm going to ask Rafaela and Vivian to just prepare to come and give us their presentation on basically Brazilian youth engaged in social reality, perceptions, and creative strategies in times of the pandemic. That is what their presentation will be based on. And so I'm going to hand over to Rafaela and Vivian at this point in time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present the research Brazilian youth in times of pandemic, perceptions, and creative strategies. Next slide, please.
And our objective today is present different perceptions of actions of young Brazilians regarding the difficulties and possibilities of coping with the problems arising from the COVID-19 pandemic in health, education, and culture. Next, please.
Our group we have 7 researchers, me, Rafaela, Viviane, Kátia, Gustavo, Priscila, and Mariana, and 2 supervisors, Fabio and Luciana. And Luciana, unfortunately, she died from COVID a few months ago. And our group is interdisciplinary. We have some education, people, health, and culture. Next slide, please.
Because of that interdisciplinary group, we decided to research in 3 areas, and for that to aim our objective, we start a quantitative research. We applied a closed online questionnaire to young Brazilians aged 14 to 35 years. And as a qualitative investigation, we collect testimonials in videos recorded and sent by the participants themselves to identify different perceptions and actions of young Brazilians about the difficulties encountered and coping strategies arising from the COVID-19. In health, education, culture, we collect data through an online created in seven parts, you can see in the slide, with 28 questions. Oh, that's it. Next slide, please.
This is an infographic about some of our findings. We received 242 responses from young Brazilians. Of this total, 85% was over 20 years old, with an emphasis of the group between 30 to 35 years old, with 32% and about the color and race, 71% identified themselves as white, and 15 as brown, and 11 as black. About the region, we have a few answers from north and northeast of the country, and a higher number of respondents from south region, and they live the majority in the capital. Next slide, please.
And there are many health problems experienced by the youth during the pandemic. However, we were also action to face these problems that were either the initiative of the young people themselves, of other people who acted and supported for the youth. The infographic illustrates the main data collected in this area. And to reach these discoveries, we asked questions related to situation experiences in the problematic health area, as well as which supports they resorted to overcome the difficulties. And the data in the infographic draw attention to a large number of young people with difficulties in maintaining health habits and mental health habits, and problems that are common not only to participants in this research, but to most Brazilians, as we can see here. So next slide, please.
About social action, 64% of supported any initiative during the COVID pandemic, and 32% participated in any social organization or some kind of group. 50% of those who participate in any group were in a leading role. Vivi, you can explain this infographic?
Yeah, here we have the education infographic, and the pandemic affects not only health, but also education. As shown in the infographic, several problems in the field of education have involved young people, students, and teachers during the pandemic. However, actions and strategies that come from students and professors were also elaborated to solve or alleviate these problems, as raised in the quantitative research. And we can see this data, and it is a reflections of the problems faced by young people in education, can result in the understanding that Santos states any quarantine is always discriminatory, more difficult for some social groups than for others. For example, in Brazil, there are teachers and students from private schools who had the financial and technological conditions to maintain the resources needed for remote educational activities, for example. However, the same didn't happen for the majority of young Brazilians who worked and studied in public schools. And now, next slide, please. You can see here in the picture, for that, one of the interests of this investigation was to identify the impacts of the COVID-19 on culture for young people, both from the perspective of consumption, enjoyment, and from the perspective of creation and production. So when asked about access to cultural artistic productions, 63% of young respondents reported that their activities become exclusively online, followed by 79% who said they had not participated in these activities during the period. So next slide, please.
One of the repercussions of the pandemic is the wide dissemination of health information caused the so-called infodemia. This effect includes the deliberate dissemination of false information to manipulate public opinion. Among the young people interviewed, 91% answered that they consider themselves well informed about the pandemic. 96%, almost 97% of the respondents reported that having already received fake news, which is a huge amount, which demonstrates its widespread of this fake news. To identify that they received false news, it is necessary to know how to recognize them. 57% responded that they can recognize fake news, and 43% said they are sometimes able to recognize it. 27% reported that they identified that the information was false after they had already shared it. Different sources of information were considered in this research. The most reliable was considered the information obtained from scientific articles. Next was the obtained from health professionals, and the information obtained from newspapers and magazines. The information transmitted by the government was considered reliable by only 3% of the young respondents, and the information transmitted by TV was considered reliable by 12%. Next slide, please. In health areas, it's necessary to face the possibility of future situations of uncertainty and disease spread globally. Another important aspect about the impacts of COVID-19 concerned the transformations in the health systems, as we observe in an integration between the public and private systems to face the epidemic. The demand for coordinated actions by health institutions was essential to managing the health crisis. In this sense, the unified health system, or public and universal health system, was fundamental. It is important to develop, from the perspective of public health authorities, early warning mechanisms and other health and scientific research for future pandemics and public health emergencies. It is also important to value the importance of mental health care and provide this care for the population. Next slide, please.
And about our recommendation conclusions to education, data show that the challenges faced by teachers and students arising from emergency remote teaching are challenges mainly linked to technological resources in the teaching learning process, but it's not a new problem here in Brazil. It's a long time ago problem. So, and it is a signal for the planning and the execution of public policies created from the ideas of the school community that knows best about their own needs. So we needed to bring together teachers, students, and managers in the curriculum organization, whether in person or remotely, can work based on a collaborative discussion that involves the intentions and the responsibility of those involved in reaching a mutual agreement on future actions, as well as giving everyone a role in the development of proposal. And in other hand, there is a clear need for increased investments in education to strengthen the virtual infrastructure, in training teachers in the use of hybrid teaching learning methodologies, salary increases that ensure the quality of life for teachers, and investment in digital resources for underprivileged students. Next slide, please. And in the key tree, we can see we found a certain suspensions of cultural rights at multiple levels. This impact shows signs of restraining and cultural diversity in the country, as subjects are, for various reasons, unable to participate freely in cultural life, a fundamental right embodied in the Universal Declaration of Cultural Diversity. When we adapt it to this scenario, considering the particularities that involves cultural rights for young people, we also need to consider the permanent consequences in the formations of these individuals. And that, sorry, go ahead.
Another important issue is to increase teaching about understanding how scientific method works, in addition to the recognition of fake news. It is important that the population is able to understand the limitations and the time needed to formulate scientific knowledge especially when we have an uncertain situation like the one we are currently experiencing. It is the role of the state to provide correct and scientifically based information and in a language understandable to the population. This would make the information disseminated by the government considered more reliable. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Excellent work, ladies. Thank you so much, Vivian and Rafaela. We really appreciate the presentation. We're going to just move right along at this point in time to the third presenter, group of presenters. And so Nishina, she's from the Youth as Researchers national team in Haiti, and she's going to be presenting on the use of social networks and psychosocial well-being of youth in Haiti during the pandemic. So Nishina, you can just go ahead and present.
Bonsoir à tous, bonsoir à tous les participants, les jeunes chercheurs, mais tout aussi bien les membres du comité éthique et tous les participants, les autres jeunes qui suivent cette présentation des résultats de recherche. Bienvenue. Donc, je suis Nishina Prévillon et je fais partie de l'un des groupes de l'équipe nationale d'Haïti. Prochaine diapositive, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, nous sommes une équipe avec 7 auteurs, 7 jeunes chercheurs. Nous avons d'abord Peterson Antenor, qui est notre chef d'équipe et qui est étudiant en anthropologie en maîtrise. Nous avons Ernst Dimitri Cadet, actuellement qui fait son mémoire en philosophie. Marlene, qui est étudiante en droit à l'Université Kiskeya. Nem Jean-Baptiste, qui est juriste. Nem Jean-Baptiste, qui est juriste. Neftali Pierre, qui est étudiante en service social, Nishina Prévillon, moi, votre présentatrice, qui a une licence en sciences de l'éducation, et enfin Luduka, qui est étudiante en sciences de l'éducation. Donc, nous sommes tous haïtiens, nous habitons tous en Haïti et nous venons de différents départements. Aujourd'hui, pour notre présentation, nous allons parler un peu de notre motivation à travers pour ce sujet de recherche, de la méthodologie et du choix des participants. Nous présenterons également nos résultats, et c'est que l'analyse. Et enfin, nous conclurons en présentant nos recommandations. Le sujet de recherche pour notre groupe est usage des réseaux sociaux et bien-être psychosocial des jeunes en Haïti à l'ère de la pandémie COVID-19. Alors, pourquoi avons-nous choisi ce sujet? Il faut dire que notre équipe était très intéressée par la question de la santé émotionnelle des jeunes parce que bien avant la COVID-19, en 2019, en Haïti, on avait eu des crises qui avaient affecté les jeunes et qui avaient généré beaucoup de stress et d'anxiété par rapport à l'arrêt des activités universitaires, scolaires ainsi que professionnelles. Et pendant ce temps, on avait vu également une intensification dans l'usage des réseaux sociaux. C'est-à-dire, il y a eu beaucoup plus de sites d'information, mais aussi beaucoup de sites de memes concernant l'humour qui permettaient aux jeunes de se détendre, de se relaxer durant cette période. Alors, en 2020, avec le confinement, c'était la même chose. D'une part, on avait les activités universitaires, les activités scolaires, également une baisse dans les activités professionnelles. Et pendant ce temps également, les jeunes se tournaient vers les réseaux sociaux qui leur offraient une porte de sortie, que ce soit pour apprendre, mais aussi pour s'amuser. Alors, vu qu'il y avait la question du stress qui était présente, mais aussi cette observation concernant l'usage des réseaux sociaux, nous avons voulu lier ces deux variables pour pouvoir poser notre question de recherche qui est la suivante. Prochaine diapositive, s'il vous plaît. Next slide, sorry. Comment l'usage, alors notre question de recherche est, comment l'usage des réseaux sociaux contribue-t-il à atténuer les conséquences psychosociales engendrées par la COVID-19 chez les jeunes en Haïti? Alors, il faut comprendre par conséquences psychosociales, qu'on parle de, d'une part, la vie sociale des jeunes et d'autre part, la question de la santé émotionnelle des jeunes. Alors, pour collecter nos données, nous avons fait deux choses. Premièrement, nous avons publié un questionnaire en ligne à travers différents réseaux sociaux tels que Facebook, tels que LinkedIn, Twitter, mais aussi on a publié ce questionnaire à travers les groupes WhatsApp. Également, les jeunes chercheurs, les jeunes de notre équipe, les ont publiés sur leur statut. Avec ce questionnaire, nous avons pu obtenir 173 réponses. C'est un questionnaire qui avait différentes questions concernant bien sûr la question démographique, l'âge, le genre et les activités, et qui cherchait également à savoir quel était l'effet de la pandémie sur les activités sociales et comment les jeunes, quels étaient les ressentis et les émotions des jeunes durant ces périodes-là. C'était à travers ce questionnaire, à travers ces réponses, lorsque nous avons collecté ces réponses, nous avons sélectionné 5 personnes afin d'avoir des entretiens individuels pour mieux comprendre et pour mieux approfondir les réponses qu'on avait déjà trouvées dans le questionnaire. Alors, nos participants, c'est 73 participants, ce sont des jeunes qui sont compris entre 18 et 35 ans, de tous les genres, et aussi de différentes activités professionnelles, universitaires, et qui sont répartis à travers les différents départements d'Haïti, mais tout aussi bien à l'étranger. Alors, que nous disent ces données, les données connectées? Qu'est-ce que nous avons pu comprendre à partir de ces données? Next slide. Next slide. Donc, une chose qui était importante qu'on avait, c'était une hypothèse, on avait prédit que les jeunes passaient beaucoup plus de temps sur les réseaux sociaux pendant la pandémie. Et c'est de grands flux montres. Parce qu'avant la pandémie, 32% des jeunes disent avoir passé entre 2 heures à 3 heures de temps sur les réseaux sociaux. Alors que durant la pandémie, nous avons eu 47% de jeunes à passer entre 3 heures à 5 heures de temps sur les réseaux sociaux. Mais aussi, ce qui est très important, c'est de voir, quand on prend ce même groupe de jeunes avant la pandémie pour un temps X, on verra qu'il y a une augmentation de ce temps pendant la pandémie sur les réseaux sociaux. C'est-à-dire, un groupe de jeunes qui passent entre 1 heure à 2 heures de temps vont passer pendant la pandémie entre 3 heures à 5 heures, plus de 5 heures, ou bien vont encore toujours passer entre 1 heure à 2 heures de temps. Next slide, please. « 30% des jeunes disent que la pandémie a eu des effets sur leurs activités sociales. Sous différents aspects, il y avait la question d'abord de l'apprentissage, parce que vu que les cours étaient suspendus, donc certaines universités ont essayé de faire les cours en ligne, mais c'était très difficile à cause de l'accès à l'Internet. Il y avait la question de la distanciation physique qui posait problème parce qu'il n'y avait plus de rencontres avec les amis, plus de rencontres avec la famille, mais aussi les engagements envers des activités communautaires étaient également suspendus, ce qui créait beaucoup de difficultés pour les jeunes. Et enfin, ce qui était très important, les jeunes nous disent qu'il y avait un ralenti par rapport aux activités professionnelles, c'est-à-dire des jeunes ont perdu leurs emplois. Il y en a d'autres aussi qui ont perdu leur petite entreprise parce qu'il y avait la rentrée des clients et la fermeture et les gens restaient chez eux et c'était beaucoup plus compliqué pour eux. Prochaine diapositive. Next slide, please. Concernant la santé mentale, on avait différents indicateurs tels que le sentiment d'anxiété, l'incertitude face à l'avenir, le sentiment de stress, le sentiment d'angoisse ou encore le sentiment de solitude. Par rapport à les activités sociales, on a plutôt environ 14% de jeunes qui disent que l'impact avait été élevé. La pandémie a eu un grand impact, un impact élevé sur leur santé mentale. Cependant, on verra que les jeunes, avec la question du stress, étaient beaucoup plus stressés que par rapport aux autres indicateurs tels que l'anxiété ou encore l'incertitude face à l'avenir. 62% des jeunes ont souvent été stressés durant cette période-là. Alors, il faut comprendre également que on verra qu'avec la question de 30% des jeunes dont la pandémie a eu beaucoup d'impact sur leurs activités sociales, et puis 14% de jeunes sur la question de la santé mentale. Donc, la pandémie a un effet beaucoup plus grand sur la vie sociale des jeunes que sur leur santé mentale. Et ce qui permet de comprendre aussi, avec la question de comprendre les réponses des jeunes sur la santé mentale, il faut dire que, comme je l'ai dit dans l'introduction, La pandémie n'a fait qu'ajouter du stress dans notre vie parce qu'on déjà on était en train de le subir depuis 2 ans, 3 ans de cela. Parce que les mêmes conséquences qu'on a vécues durant le confinement, on l'a encore vécu, qu'on a vécu durant le confinement, on l'avait déjà vécu à travers nos crises politiques. Donc, les jeunes ont tendance à faire la différenciation entre ce qui s'est passé avant et ce qui s'est passé la pandémie. Donc, c'est un tout qui s'est mélangé et qui ne fait que continuer à progresser. Next slide, s'il te plaît, please. Donc, où interviennent les réseaux sociaux dans la question de ces contraintes psychosociales, telles que les activités sociales ou encore la santé mentale des jeunes? D'abord, on va parler des apports négatifs. On peut avancer. Next slide, please. On peut avancer. Next slide. Merci. D'abord, on va parler des apports négatifs. Ce qu'on a pu remarquer à travers les réponses des jeunes, c'est qu'il y avait une augmentation du stress à cause de 2 raisons. Il y avait la question de la désinformation autour de la COVID-19. C'est-à-dire ici en Haïti, malgré les incidents assez importants, on avait aussi des problèmes à comprendre les moyens de contamination, les moyens de protection, les informations concernant les mesures barrières. Parce que toutes les informations nous venaient de seul coup à travers les réseaux sociaux, il était difficile de les différencier à cette période-là. Mais la raison la plus importante est cette anticipation. En effet, lorsque les jeunes regardaient tout ce qui se passait dans les autres pays, dans les pays développés, comment la COVID-19 avait vraiment fait beaucoup de dégâts dans ces pays, ils anticipaient une catastrophe majeure en Haïti à cause de cette pensée de notre système de santé qui était défaillant. Donc, tout cela, toutes ces informations ont augmenté le stress chez les jeunes. Mais ceci n'a pas empêché qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'apports positifs dans la vie des jeunes avec les réseaux sociaux. D'ailleurs, nous avons 37% de jeunes à dire que les réseaux sociaux les ont beaucoup aidés durant cette période-là à supporter cette pandémie, à supporter ce confinement. Les apports positifs se révèlent sur 3 aspects. D'abord, l'aspect éducatif, parce que les jeunes ont eu premièrement la possibilité de continuer leur apprentissage en ligne pour les universités qui avaient transféré leur cours en ligne. Mais tout aussi bien, il y avait la question de l'auto-formation avec les plateformes MOOC, les plateformes EDX, que les gens utilisaient c'est-à-dire pour ne pas perdre le temps, ce temps de confinement et de toujours continuer avec leur projet d'avenir. Le deuxième aspect, c'est la possibilité de pouvoir s'informer sur la COVID-19 en temps réel, c'est-à-dire avec les différents, non seulement les articles généraux qui parlent de la COVID-19 en termes de contamination, en termes de protection, mais tout aussi bien les informations sur les autres pays, sur comment les autres pays font face à cette période-là, mais tout aussi bien en Haïti par rapport aux informations que nous recevions du ministère de la Santé. Et grâce à ça, les jeunes aussi ont pu sensibiliser leur communauté avec les réseaux sociaux à respecter beaucoup plus les mesures barrières. Mais l'apport le plus important est la question de la distraction. Les jeunes trouvent que les réseaux sociaux les ont beaucoup aidés afin de mieux se détendre à travers les vidéos d'humour, à travers les films et à travers les sites de musique. C'était l'aspect le plus important dans la vie des jeunes pour pouvoir aider à diminuer le stress. Alors, par rapport à ces différents résultats, qu'est-ce que l'on peut comprendre? Quelles sont les recommandations que nous faisons aux différentes institutions, aux différents aspects de la vie nationale en Haïti? Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. D'abord, notre première recommandation se constitue au niveau de la recherche et elle s'adresse aux universités haïtiennes. Nous souhaitons que les universités haïtiennes utilisent beaucoup plus ce rôle de recherche qu'ils ont en tant qu'objectif en tant qu'université afin de pouvoir mieux comprendre et d'approfondir l'impact de la COVID-19 dans la vie des jeunes sur d'autres aspects que notre équipe n'a pas pu travailler là-dessus, tels que l'aspect éducatif, la question de l'éducation, surtout au niveau primaire, au niveau fondamental et au niveau secondaire. La deuxième recommandation qui est peut-être la plus importante, c'est concernant les institutions étatiques en Haïti, tels que le ministère de la Jeunesse, le ministère de la Santé, le ministère de l'Éducation, afin qu'ils puissent travailler en partenariat et de pouvoir offrir à nous les jeunes en Haïti des programmes novateurs qui peuvent nous informer, mais aussi qui peuvent nous aider à avancer avec nos projets d'avenir en temps de crise. Pour les institutions privées, on parle des institutions qui travaillent dans le domaine de la santé mentale. On leur demande, on recommanderait qu'ils aient plus des programmes d'assistance psychosociale en ligne et d'avoir des activités créatives en ligne qui peuvent aider les jeunes à mieux diminuer le stress et l'anxiété en temps de pandémie. En fait, c'est-à-dire que ces programmes vont être beaucoup plus accessibles pour les jeunes, peu importe l'endroit où ils se situent, qu'ils se situent en ville ou bien encore dans les provinces. Et la troisième recommandation, elle concerne les jeunes, parce que ce que nous devons comprendre avec la pandémie, c'est que les crises vont continuer à s'exister, qu'elles soient politiques, économiques ou sanitaires. Et les réseaux sociaux seront là pour nous offrir cette porte de sortie. Alors, c'est à nous les jeunes d'utiliser ces réseaux sociaux pour trouver les opportunités qui peuvent nous aider à avancer dans notre vie personnelle et professionnelle. Alors, sur ce, je vais faire la présentation. Mais bien avant de conclure finalement, next slide. Bien avant de terminer, on veut d'abord vous remercier d'avoir suivi avec attention cette présentation, mais également notre équipe veut remercier également Neftali et Pierre parce qu'il nous a vraiment bien accompagnés durant cette recherche. Merci beaucoup.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much. Thank you. We really appreciate the presentation. At this point in time, we are a bit over time, and so I'm just going to ask Ludmil to get ready and to just come and present his presentation for us. He's going to be looking at the study, a study on impacts of COVID-19 in terms of young university students rather in Haiti. So you can go ahead, Ludmil.
Bonsoir à toutes et à tous, participants et jeunes chercheurs. Je suis Ludmil Emmanuel, je suis chargé de la présentation pour le groupe N pour le rapport de notre étude en Haïti. En Haïti, la pandémie de la COVID-19 a causé de grandes difficultés dans le système éducatif, tant au niveau fondamental, secondaire et universitaire. Cependant, malgré l'effort de certaines universités qui tentaient d'intégrer à petits pas leurs étudiants dans le numérique, l'apparition de la COVID-19 n'a pas tout de même tardé à mettre à nu les failles de notre système éducatif. Car, pendant que les jeunes de beaucoup d'autres pays suivaient les cours à distance, les nôtres, pour la grande majorité, ils étaient abandonnés à l'oisiveté, sans contact avec leurs institutions, leurs universités. C'est dans ce contexte qu'on a pu déceler l'importance de porter notre étude sur le sujet qui suit. Impact de la pandémie de la COVID-19 sur les études des jeunes universitaires en Haïti. Notre travail avait pour groupe cible les jeunes de 18 à 35 ans vivant en Haïti, les jeunes universitaires. Nous avons réalisé la collecte de données sur une durée d'1 mois, au cours de laquelle nous avons eu 101 participants à travers un questionnaire en ligne que nous avons partagé sur les réseaux sociaux. 101 participants se sont portés volontaires à notre étude, dont 61,4% sont de sexe masculin et 38,6% sont de sexe féminin. D'après les résultats de notre enquête, seulement 28,7% des participants ont bénéficié des cours en ligne durant le confinement, contre 71,3% qui n'avaient aucun contact avec leurs universités. Next slide. Cependant, il n'y a que 35,7% des participants qui ont bénéficié des cours en ligne qui ont affirmé avoir pu s'adapter à cette nouvelle forme d'enseignement. L'autre partie des bénéficiaires, qui est environ 64,3%, a évoqué différentes raisons qui les ont empêchés à s'adapter, telles que des problèmes d'électricité, des problèmes de connexion Internet, manque de motivation et manque d'interaction dans les cours en ligne. Next slide. Cependant, 58,4% des participants ont affirmé qu'immédiatement après le confinement, ils se sont adaptés aux cours dans les salles de leurs établissements comme avant la COVID-19. Malgré la pandémie, 52,5 52,5% des participants ont estimé que leurs performances académiques sont restées stables. 13,9% ont estimé que leurs performances académiques ont amélioré. Par ailleurs, il y a 33,6% des participants qui ont estimé que l'impact de la COVID-19 sur leurs études a été déplorable. Malgré toutes ces variations que vous pouvez constater, leurs avis sur les impacts de la COVID-19 sur leurs études et leur santé mentale n'ont pas été trop différents, car 79,2% l'ont considéré comme un retard dans leurs études et leurs projets d'avenir, et 20,8% l'ont vécu comme un traumatisme. Compte tenu de ces réalités, notre analyse nous a donc amené à dire ce n'est pas la pandémie en soi qui est le problème pour la continuité de la formation des jeunes durant le confinement, mais le problème réside initialement, principalement, dans le système traditionnel de l'éducation en Haïti. Par conséquent, nous avons donc retenu les recommandations suivantes. Elles sont aux environs de 3. Premièrement, la formation de nos enseignants, car ils sont de la majorité peu habiles avec le numérique. On peut bien comprendre à quelles difficultés on exposerait la majorité de nos enseignants, à savoir les plus âgés, si on leur demandait d'un jour à l'autre d'intégrer cette nouvelle forme d'enseignement sans aucune formation préalable. Car eux aussi, ils ont été victimes du système traditionnel de l'éducation en Haïti. Ils n'avaient pas non plus, à leur époque, ils n'avaient pas non plus à leur disposition des ordinateurs, des téléphones intelligents, des livres numériques que nous autres avons à notre portée au XXIe siècle pour nous former tout en restant chez nous. Alors, leur formation s'avère avant tout une nécessité si on veut atteindre l'efficacité des cours à distance en Haïti. Deuxième recommandation, sensibilisation de la communauté estudiantine sur l'importance du numérique à l'ère de la COVID-19. Dans la majorité du temps des jeunes, ils utilisent leur smartphone pour chatter, pour envoyer des textos, effectuer des appels ou envoyer et chatter sur les réseaux sociaux quotidiennement. C'est pourquoi nous autres, responsables de l'UNESCO et partenaires, nous pouvons recruter et former des équipes de jeunes universitaires qui, à leur tour, auront à passer dans différents espaces universitaires afin de former ce public sur les avantages du numérique, surtout à l'ère de la COVID-19, et informer ce public sur comment ils pourraient utiliser leur smartphone pour accéder à ces plateformes numériques pour poursuivre leurs cours, leurs activités académiques sans problème. Troisième et dernière recommandation, créer un partenariat public-privé entre le ministère de l'Éducation nationale et des compagnies téléphoniques et électriques en Haïti. Considérant les problèmes que l'EDH, qui est l'institution qui dessert la population du point de vue de l'électricité, le ministère pourrait créer un partenariat avec cette institution afin que chaque soir ou dans l'après-midi à un horaire fixe, cette institution, les élèves et étudiants puissent avoir de l'électricité afin de pouvoir suivre leurs cours enregistrés, leurs cours en ligne et soumettre leurs travaux académiques sans casse-tête. De plus, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale pourrait créer un partenariat avec les compagnies électriques en Haïti, téléphoniques en Haïti, pour qu'elles distribuent plus de cartes SIM dans les institutions d'études supérieures, les universités, à travers le pays, et offrir des plans Internet plus abordables, moins coûteux au public universitaire. Comme on le dit toujours, les jeunes sont l'avenir du pays. Alors, on pense que nos jeunes étudiants doivent pouvoir continuer leurs études sans rupture, même si certaines situations peuvent toutefois les contraindre à rester chez eux. Car la COVID-19 est encore là, mais le train du monde L'avenir, il ne les attend pas. Alors, luttons pour un égal accès à l'éducation numérique pour tous nos jeunes universitaires à travers le pays. Merci. Je remercie ma collègue Nishina et ma formidable équipe et aussi Monsieur Neftali qui a été très attentionné et qui a développé son sens de leadership pour diriger notre équipe. Merci à vous aussi.
All right. Thank you so much, Ludmil. Thank you. Really appreciate your presentation. And thank you so much to all the presenters and the teams who would have embarked on the different sub areas of assessing COVID-19 and its impacts. Especially as it relates to young people in Latin America and Caribbean. Really insightful presentations. Commendations to each of the teams. At this point in time, though, we want to hear from our technical advisors. We have two of them here with us, and I'm pretty sure that they have some tips and pointers to give to each of the teams as to how to, improve the body of work that you would have presented here today. And so right now I'm going to ask Ralph Francois. Excellent. So sorry about that. So I'm going to ask Ralph to just give his overviews, his feedback, his comments to the different teams, if he has written down any, and then we can move on to Giselle, who's from the social and human sciences sector of the UNESCO Office for Central America. So you can go ahead, Ralph.
Thank you everyone. It's an honor for me to be here. I'm very happy, and I took really good pleasure to listen to all the presentations. I really like them, and I congratulate you. I believe that you have a great platform. What you're doing is very valuable. I congratulate all the youth who participate in this project, and I see great benefit of it. And I'm more interested about the way forward and how we can amplify and increase our voice better in this world. I think the researches were relevant in my point of view, as in many other point of view also, because I believe that this is not the only year that we're gonna have a situation where we have to deal with a pandemic. And today also, I don't know if you have some information, so you would know that there are conferences about the climate change. And because of the climate change, we have the risk to have more bacteria that were there in geological times that would be emerged again. We don't know yet about the bacteria because 99% of the bacteria, scientists, they don't know focal, but what kind of bacteria and what are the possible consequences. So I believe that this kind, the pandemic, the COVID-19 year, gives us incentives to think better how we can shape the world about the great opportunities that we have and work better as pals, countries, citizens. Okay, now I will go directly with the presentation. For the first presentation, it was about the whole region of Latin America and Caribbean, where they pointed out difficulty about the digital inclusion, digital technology. And I was amazed and also shocked to see how youngsters react to digital distance learning. When they point out, we found that, if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, more than 80% believe that it is difficult for them to adapt to distance learning, to digital package. And one of the recommendations was to ask or to lobby to the governments to ask them to provide sufficient materials to the teachers and also to low-income students, that they can be at point and ready to take this opportunity. I wonder, and I don't see if it is included, but I wonder if you experience virtual reality as technology. I think it's not only about the computer. I also think it's about the kind of technologies that we're using. Me personally, I have an experience in Haiti in a low-income neighborhood where I introduced 7 girls to in low-income communities to computational thinking, mostly using virtual reality to teach them about climate change. And I can tell you that I was very happy and also amazed to see the results beyond that. I believe that kind of interaction that we need through the distance learning experiences virtual reality and AR and VR would be the best options to test and to experience better what we can get out from it and get more attention from the students and also from the university scholars. So the recommendation is not only about like the computer, but also to explore other technology components or tools to see if we can engage better the citizens in a more immersed experience in terms of learning. That would be my point for the first presentation. And also for the whole presentations, all the presentation I've been following there, I see many of the recommendations have to do with policies. And sometimes we think that the fact that we have good policy, well expressed, well shaped, well framed, we have what it takes to make pressure on the government and to, push them that they can act on our direction. I don't believe so, because what I see first is, my question to you is how, or if you don't have the answer now, you can put it in your package in terms of recommendation, what tools you could use to vulgarize or to promote vulgarization of this research in terms of key communication tools like storytelling, compelling emotional story, like visual package, sensitization videos. Because I think once you have those results, you have to create a path where you can pragmatically encourage participation in active citizenship through the findings. It's good that we have the findings, but also it's important that the science could communicate better. And the whole discussion that we've seen this year, and now I'm going to the presentation in Brazil about how we have misinformation about COVID-19. Also in Haiti, we have a lot of fake news. People don't believe. We have the vax people, we have the anti-vax people. I think it's a way also to science examine better the way they communicate findings, the way they communicate evidence. So for me, is the communication of evidence through communities. How are we gonna make sure that when science talk, people could be able to understand that science is not about possibility, but more about probability. So when they say today it's gonna rain, science will not say that today it will rain or today it won't rain. They will say that there is a probability that 50%, 15% today we might have raining. So you have the science people who communicate, you have the citizens in the communities, they're not educated enough to understand what to grasp in complicated information. And this is at this point where we have the or what I would call civil societies to the journalists, how they should take what scientists said and translate it to the communities that we can have like smart citizens. And the active societies in terms of recommendations is how to create like the pool of community leaders that they can not only understand, but discuss science informations. For example, I can tell you in Haiti, people have this tendency to think that when you talk about science, you have to be total. So it is true or it is not true, but they dare not understand that science is measured. So I can say something today, and based on a lot of data that we call it, the data inform me or indicate that what I said before might change. So we have to be careful the way science talk in terms of precision in terms of how to be precise and the way people receive information from science. So I think at this level, first, I would recommend that we could have like huge information or huge education program to make sure that people at this early age, especially children, understand science. It's like at least could grasp information or what is relevant through a science communication. And I think it's important for us. And also how you wish to translate this amazing research or all the researches that you've been doing in the findings into advocacy and lobbying. Advocacy about how to, amplify more voices, make sure that we have more citizens and, engaged in this process, understand the fighting, but also work together. That's the advocacy, having more platform, more collaboration, but also for the lobby phase, which means go where the decisions are made by the political leaders and make sure that not only your voices are heard, but your voices could be translated into policies that could guide the whole process. Because I can tell you, I believe that COVID-19 is a test for us, and we have more and more, we would have more and more challenge in the next years.
All
Now,
right,
I will resume in like 2 points, like 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Make it 30 because I want to go on to Giselle because we're almost out of time.
Okay, so for the Dominican Republic, I would say during the presentations, do they see the factor of performance anxiety versus career and field? Because not only for the medical, people in medical field, but what could they see from the other fields about the sleep problem? And also, I would suggest that they would integrate the psychology department of the university into that kind of research. So basically, that was my point of view. I think that great research, and there's more and more that we can do together after all. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much for that and for the feedback. I know the team would have noted it. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hand over to Giselle now so she can give her pointers and tips.
Okay, thank you so much, Antoinette. And also thank you so much to everyone who was here today. For me, it was a great pleasure to listen to such rich content, and especially it's very motivating for us at our side of UNESCO working with youth to see the engagement and the compromise shown throughout the research processes, the presentations, and also the commitment of youth that it's unique, especially in this region, right, where we're talking about the demographic bonus. The Central American region, which is the one I have responsibility for, shows a very differentiated effect on youth, the impact, the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic on youth with focus on young women is one of the major concerns, right? And throughout the researches that were exposed, that were presented today, the main sources of concern were highlighted. Of course, the digital divide that has impacted majorly the education processes and has deepened the gap in a region that is known and qualified as the one with the biggest socioeconomic differences in the world. So unfortunately, the pandemic has done major harm in the sense that this gap has been deepened. So in that sense, I believe that the research papers presented today showcase that somehow, although it is not specifically addressed in most of the papers, if not in all. So my suggestion would be that the situation, the ground situation in the countries of study be a little bit better shown, right? More in a more clear way, so that the findings that you're highlighting can be better understood. And this goes in line also with what was said before in terms of dissemination and sharing the information with the broader public, right? So it's important to let people understand which is the origin of the context that you're analyzing and in which you are conducting your research. I will not go research paper by research paper because of time. I will not spend too much of the remaining time speaking. I just wanted to say that, well, there is a clear predominance of presentations from Haiti, and this responds to a very specific situation of the country within the Latin American and Caribbean context. And it's interesting to see how Haiti, although it's perceived as part of a continent with the characteristics that I very briefly described before, has its own specific context that leads to different conclusions or to differentiated conclusions than the ones that were drawn in the other geographical context. And I think that this is interesting also in the sense that it provides with the right basis for perhaps in the future, if you would like to find some synergies among research papers, to see how that relates to the situation in the other countries in Latin America, how it is that Haiti and the other countries in Latin America develop processes, for example, of South-South cooperation to address the specificity of Haiti, but also how do they learn from each other? I think that that's an interesting exercise that we, from a programmatic point of view, are trying to foster, right? Because as a matter of fact, what happens in the region is that especially young people are little knowledgeable about what's happening even in neighboring countries. So I believe that these amazing findings that you presented today can serve also as bridges to establish communication with neighboring countries, but also going beyond, so that there is a true understanding of the reality of the Latin American, the Caribbean continent and region in among most of the young people that you would like, that you reached, not only through this program, but also what you highlighted in terms of relations that you can have with other research centers, academia, and universities. So I particularly appreciated in the research on the consequences of sleep quality, not because I consider it was more interesting or the best, please don't take me wrong. It's just that there is little being said and analyzed about the impact on the softer side of societies, being, you know, well, mental health is becoming an increasingly important topic, but what derives from the notion of mental health. And this is a very important topic, the whole question about sleep deprivedness and its consequences, because there is a deconstruction of this perception that if you sleep little time, it means that you can perform more hours during the day, and it means that you are a better worker when you don't, you know, this pride about not sleeping, not taking holidays and these things. And so this study shows to what extent that actually is completely contrary to the to the processes that human bodies need to be able to perform, to be able to be in good health and be active in society. So I particularly appreciated that because of the reasons I just mentioned. I also think that for future research, and especially this is a comment for the very comprehensive work done by the youngsters on the Brazilian youth engaged in social transformation. This is a crucial topic, very important, especially for countries like Brazil. But since Brazil offers such a diversity in terms of population, of different peoples, you know, Black, Indigenous. So perhaps for future exercises, if you could try to have a scope that it's more, you know, that comprehends a little bit better this variety in of the Brazilian population, so that your findings are not only more accurate, but depict, you know, a situation that is more true, right? In terms of, because I see that from your samples, you have mostly women, and they are, well, people that describe themselves as white, you know, so that is just one part of the population, especially in Brazil, whereas you have a whole world, right? But this is just for, perhaps you're thinking about the second phase of this research where you can focus a little bit more or broadening this scope, but in any case, it was really well done and really well described. So I think that would be my comment for now. As I said, time is of the essence here, and if I'm not wrong, there's 5 or 6 minutes left, and perhaps there is someone else who would like to intervene. But as conclusion, I would just like to congratulate everybody, not only the research teams, but also, of course, the organizers, and would like to say that if you could perhaps motivate other young people to do this amazing work, definitely it would contribute to making a better Latin American region, in the sense that perhaps that gap will start closing sometime soon, and where young people, which are part of the demographic bonus, can become and are true actors of change. So thank you so much, and a great pleasure having been here with you.
All right. Thanks so much, Giselle. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your comments. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Ralph, also for your comments. We were scheduled to take a few of your questions and to also get the various persons from the other teams to comment on the presentations of the other groups. However, we are completely out of time. I think it was time well spent, nonetheless. And so at this point in time, I'm just going to say congrats to each and every one of the team. Very good work done. Just reiterating the sentiments from Giselle and Ralph. I'm super, super proud of the outcomes and the recommendations that we would have seen coming out. And so thanks to the UNESCO team and the organizers of this event, it was such a pleasure being here with you. Feel free to connect with each other via the Hangouts and the different connecting and social platforms on the Youth as Researchers site. I'm sure you'll be able to learn more from each other and to, you know, just increase your social networks and learn more about the work that each of you are doing. I am going to encourage each and every one of you to tune in to the sessions that are to come, especially for tomorrow. They promise to be insightful and promise to bring lots more information. So that's it for me. It was great hosting and moderating the session. Once again, thanks so much for joining. I'm Antoinette, and I hope rather to see a lot of your faces, familiar faces tomorrow. So that's it, signing out, guys. Have a good one. And thanks so much.